Invincible is the brand new animated superhero show hitting Amazon Prime this week. It's based on the wildly popular Image comic from Robert Kirkman of The Walking Dead fame, and today on the channel I'm going to be looking at the first 3 episodes. That's right, count them, 3 episodes. And just in case this is the first time you've ever been to my channel, I'm Cape Joel, and this is the video series where I give my thoughts and feelings on the episode that was, as well as shouting out any comic book Easter eggs or connections I can find. So without further ado, let's get to it. The first episode is entitled It's About Time. Now, for those of you who don't know, Invincible the comic was kind of famous for how it defied expectations and really turned a lot of classic comic book and superhero tropes on their heads, and for all these reasons and more, I'm not that shocked that this episode began not with a bang, but with a very slow, deliberately paced conversation about fatherhood featuring the voice of John frickin' Hamm. Wow, this will be the first of about a dozen wow, I cannot believe they got this person to do a voice in the show moments. The real action starts not long after as we're introduced to the Guardians of the Globe, colorful heroes with names like Darkwing, Warrior Woman, Martian Man, and the Immortal, and why yes, they are indeed 100% meant to be stand-ins for DC's Justice League. And man alive, can I just say I was not expecting such a one-to-one translation from the comics when it comes to the costumes. Normally animators want to put their own spin on it and do their own thing, but here they didn't. The Guardians, we discover, have assembled in Washington today to protect the White House and the President from a pair of supervillains called the Mauler twins, a once evil genius who took it upon himself to clone himself, and now no one really knows who the original is, a running joke that goes throughout the 3 episodes. The Maulers were introduced very early on in the first volume of Invincible, so it's cool to see them so early on in the show, too. The explosive battle is brought to an abrupt and decisive end by the appearance of Omni-Man, Invincible's own answer to Superman, here voiced by the always excellent J.K. Simmons. Omni-Man isn't actually an official member of the Guardians of the Globe, but he does help out whenever he can. But of course, Omni-Man and the Guardians aren't the main character of Invincible. That title would go to Mark Grayson, voiced by The Walking Dead's own Steven Yeun. He's the real main character, though as we meet him, his life isn't exactly working out the way he hoped it would be. He's living with the pressure of having a father who's the most powerful hero on Earth, despite the fact that he's almost 18 and seemingly has no powers of his own yet. He also gets bullied in school, can't get the girl, and works a dead-end job at a fast food restaurant just so he can afford his beloved Seance Dog comic books, which have gone 2 times a month, just so you know. Basically, he's a wonderful mashup of every underdog superhero origin story you've ever heard and loved before. Again, this is all very, very deliberate, as the first arc or so of Invincible was also about setting up this familiar status quo so they could subvert it all later on. One fateful night, Mark does end up activating his super strength, forcing his father to take time out of his schedule and take him under his wing so they can begin his training. Of course, none of this is easy. Omni-Man very clearly hoped his son would have shown powers earlier on in life, and getting them now when he did has thrown a major wrench into the family dynamic and his father's own plans. All these vast changes especially end up falling heavy on the shoulder of Nolan's wife and Mark's mother, here voiced by the always wonderful Sandra Oh. Debbie really is the heart and soul of these first couple episodes, and if the comics are any indication, the show version of her character is going to be going on one hell of her own very complex journey alongside her son. All of this extra adversity only pushes Mark that much harder to try and show himself as worthy in the eyes of his amazing alien father, even if it means going out to fight super criminals like Titan long before he's ready in a makeshift suit. Also, hey, did you know that that's Marshala Ali as Titan? Wow, what a killer cast this show has. Realizing that his son is only going to keep acting out, Omni-Man decides to get him a real super suit from the famous Art Rosenbaum, voiced by, hot damn, is that Mark Hamill? You also gotta really appreciate the clearly obvious reference that the Jewish costume maker named Art makes the most iconic superhero suits, given that so many of your favorite superheroes and their costumes were in fact created by Jewish men. Of course, Mark still needs a superhero name to go along with his costume, and I truly appreciate the show's title card only comes up after he's finally settled on the name Invincible. In fact, the title card will come up several other times when the word Invincible is spoken. Now, that's where the credits roll on the first episode, but wait, the show's not actually done, because we actually get a big twist, the twist that makes Invincible the series that so many people raved about back in the day. You see, the Guardians of the Globe are all assembled in one place, only to be brutally murdered by Omni-Man. Yes, that's right, the show, much like the book that spawns it, sets up this team of heroes as some big, major, important thing in the world of the series, only to have them get killed by Super Dad in an extra bloody gut punch to set him up as the big bad for the series. Now, the second episode is called Here Goes Nothing, and it picks up with the death of the Guardians. Mark and his mom get picked up by shadowy government agents known as the Global Defense Agency, a very clear reference to super spy groups like S.H.I.E.L.D. or Argus. An interesting little factoid about these guys is that they didn't actually debut in the pages of Invincible, but in another Kirkman book called Brit, before eventually Brit himself got folded over in the rest of Invincible. That kind of thing actually happens a lot at Image Comics, and I wonder if it's only a matter of time before Brit actually does show up here. Now, with Nolan out of commission and no one ever even thinking that he might be the one to blame for the Guardian's death, young Mark is forced to step up as Invincible and stop an invasion of aliens, the very same Flaxian aliens that got featured in the comic story that this episode is inspired by. Invincible tries his best to handle the situation like a regular comic book superhero would, but very quickly he realizes once people get killed and he himself gets splattered in their blood, this is no comic book and Mark is very much out of his depth. I gotta tip my hat to the series for not being afraid to show this guy basically have a panic attack at his first at-bat, freeze on the spot, yet still try and save a little old lady from dying. It also really hits home the idea that the situations in Invincible are going to be dire, they are going to be life and death, and everything you think you know about comic books won't apply here. Invincible is only saved because of the intervention of the Teen Team, young heroes who, unlike him, seemingly have their shit together, and once again, wow, the voice cast here is out of this world. Zachary Quinto, Jason Mantzoukas, Gillian Jacobs, it's an embarrassment of riches, I tell ya. And that's even before we start talking about the fight choreography, which is similarly tip-top notch, featuring tons of different characters all showcasing a bunch of different powers all at once on screen. Turns out Adam Eve, one of these teen heroes, just so happens to go to Mark's school and offers to show him the finer points of being a cape and cowl type, while also helping put him at ease about the whole freezing up on his first mission, because, well, apparently that's pretty common in the superhero community. In fact, the extra interest that Eve starts paying Mark also catches the eye of Amber Bennett, his crush, who actually got a race change for the new show. It doesn't bother me at all because her race was never an important part of her character, but I'm sure plenty of people, racist online will be mad about it. We also got to talk about the musical choices in the show. So far, they've been great. It's funny how having a great needle drop soundtrack has become such an expected factor in making a great superhero show, and Invincible definitely has some eclectic tastes. Later, we see that the Teen Team's de facto leader, Robot, has figured out that the Flaxian aliens come from a universe wherein time moves differently, and as such, they only won that last fight because their opponents literally got old and died, an advantage that will not be on their side the next time they fight. In fact, as we discover, having decades of their own time to work on a plan also means that when the aliens do come back, they're now packing brand new weapons which can counteract the Teen Team's ability. They only end up actually managing to get out of this situation because Invincible gets mad and unleashes the full force of his strength for a minute. Right around this time, too, Mark's dad actually manages to recover and is able to go home, but it's clear that he's keeping some dark secrets and fights to get his costume back, not wanting any evidence to be able to be traced back to him, and indeed, people are starting to take notice of the fact that he was the only one who managed to survive the superhero massacre. Before the episode is over, Invincible ends up getting called back into action to defend Earth from Alan the Alien, here voiced by Seth Rogen. I can't, guys, I just can't. The casting in this show is so amazing. Comic readers know this guy actually has a long history with the Veltramite race, and we'll probably all get filled in on that later on. Right now, he's just kind of fun and funny, and Mark is actually able to defeat him, not by throwing any punches, but by proving he was actually wrong, showing that he is very much already a different sort of hero than his father, who's had no problem just punching it out with Alan in the past. Speaking of Omni-Man, he opts to deal with the Flaxians once and for all himself by massacring their entire world. This happened in the comics too, but it happened before the death of the Guardians, and we didn't learn the whole story until like issue 93. I like what the show does here, moving things around, and the musical choices here are also so freaking killer. That's the Canadian band called Holy Fuck. No, really, that's actually their name. Now, the final episode in this epic-length 3-pack is called Who You Callin' Ugly, and it deals with the fallout of the death of the Guardians of the Globe. In the comics, this funeral actually had some really fun Easter eggs, if memory serves. They don't do it here in the show, but that's not to say we're not going to get some comic references later on. Omni-Man gives an impassioned speech about his dead colleagues, but it's clear people are zeroing in on the truth whether he likes it or not, including Damien Darkblood, the Hellboy meets Constantine stand-in for the show, voiced by frickin' Clancy Brown. What is truly interesting is that despite how bad we've seen him be up until this point, Nolan still does actually try to be a good husband and father, even going out of his way to try and make this a teachable lesson in heroism for his son, saying that no matter how bad things get out there in the real world as a superhero, you can't bring those feelings back home with you. Mark tries to escape the harsh reality of hero life by making a date with Amber, and you gotta love seeing a dude who faced down alien death rays in the last episode is still having a hard time just talking to a girl. It's all very endearing, and because every superhero needs a good old-fashioned love triangle, Adam Eve dumps her cheating boyfriend Rex Splode, meaning that she too would be free to be pursued by Mark. Mark ultimately recruits his best friend William to help him out and make himself appear more presentable. I dig when he lists a bunch of writers that Amber probably likes. Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of them, a former journalist for The Atlantic who also just so happens to write comic books as well. Mark also just so happens to reference the comic series Welder by Jeff Lemire, so hey, maybe we will actually be getting cameos in Invincible after all, and if that's not Amazon saying, hey, maybe we'll make that into a show at some point, I don't know what is. Now, with the old Guardians dead and gone, Robot is tasked by Cecil of the Global Defense Agency to assemble a brand new team, and with that comes a big old fight montage made up of some more well-known heroes from the comics like Black Samson, as well as some reimaginings like Shrinking Ray, and several new heroes too. The new team is a mess right away, loaded with conflict and divides that need to be overcome. They don't really respect Robot either as their leader, and even other outsiders like the very funny Monster Girl treat him like an app on their phone instead of a clearly feeling sentient being. Invincible ends up getting another chance to be a hero and even team up with Adam Eve along the way to battle a mad scientist going by the name Dr. Seismic. This dude is freaking hilarious, and as I found out later, apparently they let a lot of the actors on this show ad-lib their lines, which makes sense because a lot of this dude's best zingers feel like they were riffed on the spot, which is very cool. Invincible manages to save the day and even make his dad proud of him along the way. Against all odds too, he even manages to save his date with Amber, though doing so means he will potentially miss out on a future relationship with Eve, but hey, that's the way the super cookie crumbles, right? As episode 3 comes to a close, the Mauler twins manage to escape supervillain jail, all because of a mysterious benefactor who turns out to be Robot. Yes, that's right, he seemed so nice, didn't he, everyone? Well, guess what? Even the robots can't be trusted in this show. And so that was the first 3 episodes of Invincible, and it was a lot to take in all at once, but I do my best. This really is the special kind of show where you can tell everyone involved at every level cared a lot, from the amount of time to effort to clearly money that was put into this show to make it everything that it is. They really seem to know that Invincible has everything it needs to be the next great superhero adaptation hit, and they ran with it. This might actually be one of the closest adaptations of a comic book story I've seen in a very long time, with lines and scenes taken directly from the book itself, almost word for word sometimes. Yes, they changed stuff too, and one of the biggest departures seems to be the cutting of a whole subplot involving students from Mark's school being turned into suicide bombers against their will. Yeah, we could probably leave that behind. Mark Grayson is a likable, relatable hero. The mystery and intrigue with Omni-Man is fascinating, and the action scenes are tight. The jokes all hit, the subject matter is mature and serious without ever crossing that line into being dark and egregious, something that a lot of these comic book adaptations really struggle with. All in all, this is a great start for things to come, which is why I give these first 3 episodes collectively a very much deserved 9 out of 10. Be sure to keep your eyes peeled to the Cape Joel channel in the future, as I will be covering this show as it continues. And until we meet again, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye.